Hey, this is James Glass, and I'm here working on our tiny home, and I wanted to give you a few pointers for epoxy resining things, concrete countertops. In this case, these countertops are made out of old heavy-duty fiberboard doors, these solid core doors. So let me get a glove on here. So you're going to buy your epoxy. The most common stuff that's out there is the two-part 50-50 stuff. There's also a little bit heavier duty epoxy. Hang on, let me set this camera down for just a second. Get a glove on because I'm going to need that for the demonstration for one of the pointers. But most of the stuff you're going to buy at a hardware store is going to be the 50-50 mix. So that brings you to point one. Get yourself a measuring cup, and this one is also available at hardware stores. Today I mixed up 24 ounces of this, so it was pretty straightforward, 12 and 12. If you have more complicated pours, and you need a more graduated scale, you can go to automotive paint supply store and get some there. So you're going to mix this up, and you're going to mix up at least 20% more than you need, because you're going to pour this as a liquid. And then you're going to use one of these guys, which is a disposable, I just literally poured this seconds ago, which is a disposable notch trowel. And I use the 3/16 setting. When you pour this, you do not want to make it too thick in one spot and too thin in another. And the nice thing about using the 3/16 notch trowel, this one's got 1/8 inch, 3/16, and 1/4 inch. You can scrape and spread this and leave material behind, just like you're applying mastic down. It's a one-time use. Get yourself an old paintbrush because you're going to need that for the edges. But pour everything on your surface out of the cup, trowel it around, equalize it, and then you come back and take the brush and clean up the edges. These are not drip marks. This is actually something that was already in the door. I did nothing to, the hinge mortises are still there. This is all part of the look that I'm going for. There was some hardware mounted there. I didn't even fill it in, so that'll just divot, which is fine. But I poured this out, took the 3/16 inch trowel and spread it smooth, and then made sure plenty gushed over the edges. And then I took the brush and equally applied an amount of resin to the edges. You got about a 10-15 minute working time. 15 minutes is really pushing it, at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what I got the room in here. And it takes about an hour to cure. So you've got 10 minutes. Make sure you don't make such a big pour that your resin starts to get gooey, because the problem is, I've never seen this happen, but I know it would happen. If this stuff starts to set up and you're trying to work it, you will just leave big drag marks, cloudy, ugly drag marks in there. So you gotta get your stuff mixed. Stir it thoroughly. Follow the directions in the package. You stir it one way for a minute. You stir it another way for a minute. You just really stir it thoroughly. Pour it out. Notch trowel it. Brush it. Okay, but you're not done. Now you've got an equal distribution on the horizontal and vertical surfaces. That's great. However, it's still liquid. It's still running. It's still dripping. And you got bubbles in it. So when you pour this, you'll see microscopic bubbles in the surface. So before you worry about the fact that everything is dripping off the edge and you've set up your cardboard or whatever down here for the extra, take your heat gun, and while you're still in that 10 to 15 minute window, stay about 6 to 12 inches away and just lightly, don't burn it, just lightly get all the air bubbles out with the heat gun. It works great. You'll see the bubbles go away instantly. It'll be clearly obvious. Now, you got a liquid surface at this point. It hasn't solidified. And you've used extra to make sure that you get good coverage, because this stuff is pretty viscous. If you've got a spot that's missing, it'll basically be like the unglaciated part of Wisconsin. That's a reference that only people that grew up in Wisconsin or geologists will get. I grew up in Wisconsin. And you'll have a spot that's not affected. Well, shit, you don't want that. So you got to make sure it's worked really well. You got to put on excess. But what do you do about all these drips? Well, not a whole lot. Because you can take your DA and 60 grit, and this is the backside, doesn't get seen. You can knock them off. But you can do this one final thing while this is still liquid get your glove finger, and by the way, you're working with gloves the whole time, and just come underneath and take off the excess. It's like snot. And that'll minimize how much sanding you have to do. Just run your finger under the edge. And I did it with the brush first. And see those, can you see those drips right there? By the way, I've got this all stacked up on drywall, and so that the edge doesn't stick. And just before I'm done, before I let this completely stick, I'm going to put fresh drywall pieces under here that do not, so the drywall doesn't, these are just scrap drywall spacers. I'll put a fresh one underneath this. It's already starting to stick, see? I'll put something under there so that untouched, unresined areas under here do not stick to my spacers. So this is up off the ground. So when I go to pull this up, it's not all glued together to the horses and the drywall and all that shit. But yeah, just run your finger under the edge, pull off all those drips, just like that, see that? And that'll minimize the amount of sanding you have to do on the back side. And you can sand the stuff, the excess stuff off. So those are all the pointers. Mix it thoroughly. Pour it at the right temperature. Recognize that you've got 10 to 15 minutes to work. Use a heat gun. Use a disposable notch trowel. Use a brush to get the edges. Scrape off the excess stuff. And you can have some beautiful concrete or wooden epoxy covered countertops that are as equally strong as laminate. I got these doors for $6 a piece at my local restore, and I made all my cabinets for my kitchen, and this is the bathroom. This is the bathroom, master bathroom counter for the sink, and that's the backsplash. And they're great. If you don't like the super high gloss look, I'm leaving it high gloss. But if you don't like the high gloss look, you get a Scotch pad, and you can dull it down to whatever finish you want. And in the future, if you want to bring that high gloss look back, or you get scratches in this, you can also buff it back to a high gloss shine. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching.